You're running as a Republican. On your website, in your brochures, you make this claim: principled leadership. Ron was also one of only 4 Republican congressmen to endorse Ronald Reagan for president against Gerald Ford in '76. There's a photograph of you, Ronald Reagan, on the right, heralding your support of Ronald Reagan. And yet, you divorced yourself from Ronald Reagan. You said this: although he was once an ardent supporter of President Reagan, Paul now speaks of him as a traitor, leading the country in the debt and conflicts around the world. I want to totally disassociate myself from the Reagan administration. And you go on to the Dallas Morning News. Paul now calls Reagan a dramatic failure.
Well, I'll bet you any money I didn't use the word traitor. I bet you that's somebody else, so I think that's misleading. But a failure, yes. In many ways, the government didn't shrink. Ultimately, after he got in office, he said, all I want to do is reduce the rate of increase in size of the government. That's not my goal. My goal is to reduce our government to a constitutional size, completely different. I think that, as a matter of fact, he admitted in his memoirs that he had a total failure in Lebanon, and he said he relearned the Middle East because of that failure. And so there are, But if
he's a total failure, why are you using his picture in your brochure?
Well, because he ran on a good program, and his idea was limited government, get rid of the Department of Education, a strong national defense.
George Herbert Walker Bush, this is according to Ron Paul. Bush is a bum, Paul wrote in November 15, 1992, issue of his newsletter, The Ron Paul Political Report, and asked about the current President Bush, whether he voted for him in 2004. Paul says no, he misled us in 2000. Asked if he voted for Bush in 2000. No, I didn't vote for him then either. I wasn't convinced he was a conservative. And actually, in 1987, you submitted a letter of resignation to the Republican Party. I therefore resign my membership in the Republican Party and enclose my membership card. If Reagan's a failure, Bush 41 is a bum, and you didn't vote for Bush 41 is a bum, and 43 you didn't vote for, and you resigned from the Republican Party, why are you running for a Republican candidate for president?
Because I represent what Republicanism used to be. I represent the group that wanted to get rid of the Department of Education, the part of the Republican Party that used to be non-interventions overseas. That was the tradition, the Robert Taft wing of the party. There was a time when the Republicans defended individual liberty and the Constitution and decreased spending. So the radicals, the ones who don't really belong in the Republican Party, and why the Republican Party is shrinking, why the base is so small, is because they don't stand for these ideals anymore. So I stand for the ideals of the Republican Party. I've been elected 10 times as a Republican. I've been a Republican all my life, except for that 1 year that I ran as a Libertarian. But no, I represent the Republican ideals, I think, much more so than the individuals running for the party right now.
If you do not win the Republican nomination for president, will you run as an independent in 2008?
I have no intention to do that.
Absolute promise.
I have no intention of doing that.
Well, but no intention is a wiggle word.
Okay, I deserve one wiggle now and then, Tim. I mean, what's the devil?
So no Sherman-esque statement. I will not run as an independent.
Well, I can be pretty darn sure that I have no intention, no plans of doing it, and that's about 99.9% of the chance. I don't like people who are such absolutists. I will never do this, or I will win. I'm going to come in first. I don't like those absolutist terms in politics.
But the door is open a little bit.
Not very much. It really isn't. I don't play. Tim, we just raised $10 million in 2 days. We haven't even had a race. We have February 5th coming up. We have a campaign to run. Why do you ask all the other candidates? How many other candidates have you asked, are you going to run as a third-party candidate if you don't win? Have you asked John McCain that?
Well, if someone has a history of running as a third-party candidate, sure. You ran in '88 as a Libertarian.
Yeah,
it's a logical question.
Yeah, I know, but they're independent, so I ask them too.
I will. Before you go, Mike Huckabee, Republican candidate for president, ran this commercial for Christmas, and many thought that the shelf in the back looked like a cross. You were asked about it on CNN, and this is what you said.
It reminds me of what Sinclair Lewis once said. He says, when fascism comes to this country, it will be wrapped in the flag, carrying a cross.
What does that mean?
What, fascism or definition of fascism?
Do you believe that Mike Huckabee is a threat?
I didn't say that. I said it reminded me. Matter of fact, they caught me completely cold on that. I had not seen the ad, and they just said there was a cross there. And, you know, it was an instantaneous reflex because I knew of Sinclair's Lewis about being cautious. because, you know, what prompts this is things like the Patriot Act. You know,
But let me go back.
No, if you're not a patriot...
But let me go back to this ad. You do not believe that Mike Huckabee, that ad commercial, represents the potential of fascism in the form of a cross.
No, but I think this country, a movement in the last 100 years, is moving toward fascism. Fascism today, the softer term, because people have different definitions of fascism, is corporatism, where the military-industrial complex runs the show. When they, in the name of security, pass the Patriot Act, if you don't vote for it, you know, you're not patriotic America. If you don't support the troops, and you don't support, if you don't support the war, you don't support the troops. It's that kind of antagonism. But we have more corporatism and more abuse of our civil liberties, more loss of our privacy, national ID cards, all this stuff coming has a fascist tone to it. And the country's moving in that direction. That's what I'm thinking about. This was not personalized. I never even used my opponent's names, if you notice.
So you think we're close to fascism?
I think we're approaching it very close. There's one documentary that's been put out recently that has generated a lot of interest called Freedom to Fascism. And we're moving in that direction. We're not moving toward Hitler-type fascism, but we're moving toward a softer fascism. Loss of civil liberties, corporations running the show, big government in bed with big business. So you have the military-industrial complex, you have the medical-industrial complex, you have the financial industry, you have the communications industry. They go to Washington and spend hundreds of millions of dollars. That's where the control is. I call that a soft form of fascism, something that is very dangerous.
For the record, the Sinclair Lewis Society said that Mr. Lewis never uttered that quote.
But others refuted that and put them down and said that, and they found the exact quote where it came from.
To be continued. Dr. Ron Paul, be safe on the campaign trail. Thanks for sharing your views.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
As